Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In this video I'll show you how I turn trash into Christmas decor, so let's get started. For the first project I'm using some tin lids. I started by punching a hole in the top of the smallest lid and then gluing in an eye hook. I then glued all the lids together from the largest to the smallest and then set it aside until the glue dried. Next, I glued a piece of a chair spindle to the center of a small thin tin. I then glued the stack of lids to the spindle. After the glue was dry, I attached 3 small dowels between the lids. I then added clay snowflakes around the base of each dowel. I did this for decoration but also to help hold the dowels in place. I then added some clay around the spindle base as well. Next, I added clay around the base and then each lid on the top. After the clay was dry, I sprayed on a coat of paint. This paint will act as a primer coat. Next, I painted all the carousel horses and set them aside to dry. I then painted all the clay elements on the top and bottom along with the dowels and spindle. Next, I glued the carousel horses to the dowels. I then added a ribbon hanger and glued on a few small bows. To finish it, I used Stickles glitter glue on each of the tiers and on the bottom platform. For the next project, I'm using a styrofoam ball and a soda pop bottle. I started by removing the center of the ball so that I could glue it to the neck of the bottle. I used tape to hold it together until the glue dried. Next, I rolled out some air dry clay and covered the styrofoam ball. I used water to smooth the clay. Next, I sculpted his face. I rolled out a small cone shape for his nose and used a clay tool to blend it onto the other clay. I then rolled out a small ball of clay and cut it in two to use as his cheeks, attaching it the same way as the nose, using water to smooth it out. Next, I use the clay tool to make an indent for his mouth. I'm going to give him a pretty big smile. To make his eyes, I'm using an eraser that I cut into a curved shape. I just press it into the clay where I want his eyes to be. I then use the clay tool to make his eyebrows. After the clay was dry, I painted his face. I then added glitter all over the head. Next, I attached a piece of bumpy chenille around his neck to use as his arms. I then made a hat from a piece of black felt. I cut a circle and then cut a smaller circle from the center of it. Next, I cut a rectangle piece of felt and sewed the small ends together. I then cut a small circle to fit the top of the hat and then sewed that on as well. After that was sewn together, I flipped the hat right side out and sewed it to the hat brim. When the hat was finished, I gently tugged on the brim to stretch the felt. This gives the hat a bit of a floppy look. Next, I added some glitter and faux snow to the bottle. I then glued a piece of tape over the opening because I misplaced the bottle cap. I then glued his hat on. Next, I cut out 2 sets of mittens from the felt and attached them to the bottom of the chenille stems. I then glued tinsel around his neck and a piece of ribbon around his hat, and then decorated his hat with a few picks. I added some glitter glue to cover up the hot glue on the picks. To finish it, I glued on a small tree and added some glitter glue to the tops of his mittens. For the last project, I'm using a burned out light bulb and an empty medication bottle. I started by adding a small twine loop to a bead end cap. I then glued that to the top of the light bulb. Next, I made some small clay snowflakes and glued those to the light bulb as well. I then set it aside to dry. Once it was dry, I glued 4 pieces of skinny hemp cord to the bottom of the bulb. After I attached all 4 pieces of cord, I added a braided clay piece to cover the bottom of the bulb. I also added a snowflake to the very bottom. I then painted the entire thing. To make the gondola, I first cut the pill bottle's top off and then covered it with clay using a basket weave mold. Once the clay was dry, I gave it a coat of paint and then dry brushed gold paint over top of that. Next, I used silver and copper colored contour liners and drew doodles on the negative spaces. I then glued the gondola to the light bulb. To finish it, I glued a small Santa to a wood block and then glued that inside the basket. I hope you enjoyed these Christmas projects, and I'll see you in the next video.